Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Red Room. It's Valentine's week, and this month we're focusing on love between beloveds, of course. And tonight the topic is chemistry. Arousal is more than sex. And one of the reasons, when we place it all in perspective, that we keep a marriage or a long-term relationship alive, interesting, and fun is arousal, not necessarily meaning sexual arousal, but arousal of our systems, our mind, our heart, our enthusiasm, our attitude. And so if we're going to look at the marriage model, the designer marriage model, things that are inside this heart are things that we create together in the relationship. And those are 6: know and share yourself, have common values, be best friends, have emotional intimacy, have a romantic bond, and create happiness together. Now, all of those things, we may not be working at the highest level of all of them at the same time, but when we think about working on our marriage, we know that, first of all, we have to be best friends. And we want to be romantic with each other, which has to do with that chemistry feeling, that romantic feeling. And that relationships, the best friend that is the romantic best friend, that relationship needs renewal and growth, change and stimulation through the lifespan. Just like if you have a garden, and yes, perhaps it's a perennial flower or tree, but with the seasons, with the lifespan, it needs to be nurtured, nourished, pruned, taken care of, just like an intimate relationship. And so, yes, we've all heard that concept. If you want to keep your marriage or your intimate relationship, you need to work on it. And so the working on it part is novelty and arousal. And yes, keeping that best friendship, which means probably needing to get better at communicating as the lifespan goes by. The romance, which means keeping the romantic bond alive, like we talked about last week in the Red Room. And then novelty and arousal. Novelty meaning always something new, and arousal, something new that gets us going. Thank you for tuning in. And anytime if you have any questions or comments, I'm delighted to hear from you. And it doesn't have to be exactly on topic either. It's whatever is on your mind that you've brought to me this evening. I'm interested in that conversation with you. So chime in at any time. And otherwise, the overweening topic tonight is chemistry. That chemistry between a man and a woman, or in an intimate relationship, where arousal is more than sex. Yes, we want a great sex life, and we want sexual arousal. And that's what we're going to talk about next week, specifically the sexual arousal and the sexual relationship. But this week, I wanted to talk about how arousal is outside of sex, or not specifically in the sexual experience, but around it. So often we focus on just the sexual intimacy part and forget how much attention needs to be paid to those things enfolding it, around it, keeping it healthy, happy, alive, and nurtured. And that's the quote-unquote novelty and arousal part, meaning something new, something arousing, which means not depressing, but arousing, lifting, something that lifts our spirits, lifts our sense of physical vibrancy, lifts our mind to better thoughts, lifts our philosophy, lifts our sense of the other person, and lifts our sense of how much the other person appreciates and cares for us. So this week, Valentine's week, one of the every year it's different for Jack and me. We're always going to do something special, and one of the things that is our personal tradition is I give Jack a Valentine every day for a week, because I'm the word person after all, and his number one love language, other than how I look, is words, which means if I'm going to be nurturing this marriage relationship, which is the closest to my heart of anything in all of life, then I'm going to do the things that I know are important to him. But this year, I decided, I kind of toyed around with the idea, the guy always gives the girl flowers. Well, what about giving him flowers? And I didn't want to one-up him, so I didn't want to go, huge, kind of like, well, whatever he did wouldn't be equal to what I did. And it turned out it was pretty equal what we did. He gave me flowers, and I gave him flowers. So I went and got some nice roses and some, greenery, and I made a rose arrangement for him. And he has, in various ways of phrasing it, thanked me sincerely for giving him roses, probably about 6 times, which every time it says to me that what I did matters, that I'm good at something, I'm good at loving him, I'm good at making him feel cared for. Now that's a little bit of arousal, that's lifting my spirits. And I'm taking it from what he says, that every time he sees his roses, it lifts his spirits somewhat. Not that we're jumping around dancing, but it's an arousing experience, and then it's an impact on your senses that connects with your heart and your mind. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I love your thoughts. I love your questions about this topic, because arousal means getting yourself cranked up, getting yourself going, getting yourself all juiced up or happy or excited or interested or curious. In some way, who you are has perked a little bit. Maybe it's like when an animal, a dog or a cat, perks their ears. It's like, what's that? That's an arousal. The senses are aroused, and we're paying more careful attention than we just ordinarily pay attention, But when it's, the volume is turned up on your sensitivity to something, that's the arousal. We want that. We want to create that, because out of that then comes something that adds to the relationship, that quote unquote works on it, gives it new life, gives it new color. And this is hard for some people, because there are certain personalities, first of all, who do not like surprises, and they're a little bit anxious. So if it's something new, it's like, wait a minute, you didn't warn me about this. And so you want to be clear with the person whom you love. You want to know what things arouse their senses, their sensibilities in positive ways, in ways that they like. So that means know your man, know your woman, and know what things they really like and how to lift them. I know that my husband loves Woody Allen. He loves Woody Allen movies. He loves Woody Allen's intelligence and sense of humor. So if he's feeling a little down or tired, I'll suggest, do you want to watch a Woody Allen movie? Because I know that lifts his senses. That gives him a little bit of that novelty and arousal. It's something different. It's a treat. Now, I would rather watch something like The Bourne Identity or one of Tom Clancy's things. That gets me going. All the action and the mental stimulation of figuring out a plot, that's the novelty and arousal that gets me going with movies. Now, also the novelty and arousal of something that's heartfelt, something that touches you deeply and maybe brings you to tears. That's another kind of arousal, where your heart lifts, opens, fills your eyes, your face your beingness with a sense of art, awe, wonder, joy, gratitude, being excited by something, being in the presence of something that you are grateful for or which you love. I wrote this in quite a bit of detail on Facebook recently. What we did on Saturday before Valentine's Day, we went to the symphony. And it was, for Jack and me, arousal at the highest level because of the magnificence and the romanticism of the four pieces that the symphony orchestra played that evening. It was marvelous. Now, some people don't like classical music, so that wouldn't be a good choice for them. There was another thing that added a little bit of novelty and arousal to that evening. I think it was after the concert. It was either at intermission or after the concert. We heard applause, and we looked over into the entryway of the symphony hall, and a young man, there was a gift bag sitting beside him, and he had put a red cushion on the floor and kneeled on it. And in the middle of all the people on the dais, he had put the cushion on the floor and asked his beloved to marry him. Now, she wasn't expecting that, and obviously she was the kind of woman who was absolutely beside herself thrilled, in love, adoring him. He did something with novelty and arousal to lift the spirits not only of him and her, but everyone around them. They added romance to that evening for all of us. I know people were taking photographs of them. Something unexpected, something novel, new, different, something arousing in the sense that it was dear, it was tender, it was romantic, it was passionate. We need those things to nourish our romantic selves. And each of us has our own taste, our own style of what arouses us. You know, our sense of humor, Jack and I, is very different. I like the kind of like pratfalls or slapstick. He likes the intellectual witticisms. So if we want to arouse our sense of humor, he knows what kind of movie I like, I know what kind of movie he likes, or he knows what kind of sense of humor to get me to laugh. And that's, of course, one of the things that our men are usually better at than our women, where they will figure out what it is that it takes to get the people that they care about to laugh. And laughter is another form of arousal, of course. And that chemistry arousal that is between people, whether they're friends, family members, or lovers, the sense of humor, I love that concept. If you can laugh, and if you can laugh out loud, you get a 40-minute relaxation response that benefits your stress up to 40 minutes. And that's a huge impact on us. That's arousing in a sense of reducing stress and anxiety and bringing out the relaxation and pleasure response. So that's another way of arousal, is arousing the pleasure response. Somebody's just checking in. Sorry you're late, and I don't mind. You check in whenever you like. You're always welcome, and I'm thrilled that you chimed in. And thank you, dear hearts, for tuning in tonight. And please ask me any questions, offer me your thoughts, and engage me in a conversation. As you know, I love that. Meanwhile, I'm talking about nurturing, watering, gardening our relationships with arousal that's not just sexual arousal, but the chemistry of arousing our senses and our interaction and our relationship and our connection. When you give that life, it bleeds over into the friendship. unfortunate metaphor, it affects our sex lives, our arousal sexually, our bond, our romantic bond. So if you have a question or concern, or you've been trying to figure out how to get that novelty and arousal in your relationship, and it hasn't worked, or something has worked, I'd love to hear about it. So when we think of arousal, usually it has to do with our senses, because that's how we sense and interact with each other. Someone says, so how do I arouse without becoming sexual, even though I want to become sexual? Perennial question, isn't it? And with certain people, and a lot of women actually, if she is approached immediately sexually and she's not feeling romantically bonded, she may not be open to that. She may not soften. She may not want to go there. And so that means she wants the bond, the romantic bond, and you want to get her connected with you with enthusiasm. Then whatever it is, she's going to be enthusiastic about it. So knowing your woman is going to take you a long way in terms of what it is that will work for you and what it is that won't work. As I said before, some women love surprises. Oh my gosh, when Jack brings me certain surprises, it's so thrilling I weep, which it just takes me to another place and another part of who I am. And that's one of the things that I thank Jack for, is when he influences me in those kinds of novel ways, he in essence gives me the gift of giving me a part of myself that I didn't know I had. It's a kind of awakening. And because he knows me well, he knows what I like, that's what he works to provide. Sometimes he says it takes a crowbar to get me to laugh before noon, and sometimes it doesn't, but he tries. And as a result of that, he brings me more good cheer than anyone I know. So some of us like surprises. Some of us are completely turned off and resentful when we're surprised. And you need to know what it is that's going to work for the one that you love, because generic ideas oftentimes aren't going to match what that person really likes. So somebody really they get excited about going to their favorite restaurant where everybody knows them, welcomes them, they chat, the arousal of friendship and good conversation. Other people want the excitement of going to a place where they've never gone before. Let me see, we've got a comment. Jack's a sweetie pie, somebody says, and whoever it is knows, either through what I've said or knows him personally, that he is a great sweetie pie. I'm glad you're talking about this topic tonight, because I have a problem in this area. Too often I'm reluctant to approach my husband in that way because I'm afraid of being rejected by him. Ooh, how selfish is that? I'll talk about that a little bit more. So it's your own fear rather than your intention to make him feel loved. I'm the flower guy, the card guy. So what I do when I can't use, so what do I do when I can't use things? Oh, great question. And then I know, and I'm a good listener, communicator. Still, yes, exactly, which means you want to know your lady even better. But I know I'm being a little ridiculous about it because he usually does not reject me. Ooh, you're not only being a little ridiculous, you're being completely ridiculous, aren't you? Because he obviously loves you and welcomes you and doesn't reject you. So let me talk to that one first. I'm reluctant to approach my husband in that way because I'm afraid of being rejected by him. So, dear heart, there's a thought that I have sometimes that is kind of like shorthand. when we want a truly mature relationship, a passionate relationship, we want to move away from being the quote unquote knight in shining armor and the damsel in distress, which are immature roles. These two people don't live together, they don't have a home, they're not best friends and intimate. One is being rescued by the other. What we want is for you to walk into the roles of the king and the queen. And notice, when we think king and queen, we think side by side. They are partners, which means they work together. They don't work against each other. They don't need the other one to rescue them. And that means asking you to move into the role of being an adult. And since it's a woman, I would say, for you to move into the role of really being a lady, or really being a woman, where you're more concerned with being unconditionally loving and using whatever it is that you have available to express love for this person, and not really concerned about what you get, not really concerned about feeling inadequate or rejected. Because if we're defending ourselves, worried about whether or not we're going to be rejected, that's a self-esteem issue which needs to be healed and grown up. Because as an adult, you're confident, you know who you are, and you like who you are. And you know that you deserve a good life, a good, healthy life. So if you're afraid of his rejection, that says that you haven't matured that part of yourself, and you're being seduced out of doing the loving thing by your own immaturity or your own wound. And that's none of your husband's business, although he'll probably help you with it. But I would say to grow up and heal that part of you so that it doesn't get in the way of you giving everything you have to be unconditionally loving to this husband that you have, dear. Let's see, someone else says, if my girl came on to me, I would not reject her advances. I would relish the idea of her taking the initiative. And that's true of most men, and it's true of healthy men. However, dear, there are immature men and there are unhealthy men, and some of them can't take it. The wonderful writer, Dr. David Snarsh, and I've mentioned him before, he has a chapter called Doing and Being Done, which talks about the robustness of an adult couple where each person is comfortable in just receiving pleasure. And some people aren't. They can't relax and let in and be that vulnerable. And also then both people are comfortable just completely pouring it on and giving pleasure. So they're adults, the king and the queen, can do that dance with delight and joy. People who are have not yet matured themselves feel too vulnerable, feel too afraid, too inadequate, whatever it is, and then they don't allow themselves to freely move into that kind of exchange of pleasure. We've got another comment. Let's see what it is. Didn't want to sound like a Cialis commercial, but it's hot when she takes the lead. Absolutely. And that is a wonderful example of novelty and arousal. If she doesn't always take the lead, and sometimes she does, immediately it adds some magic. It adds some intensity, some arousal. It's like, ooh, this is different. Ooh, this is cool. Ooh, this is sexy. That's a great example of adding novelty and arousal to your sex life. Okay, let's see, another comment. But some men are attracted to the unattainable, and when a woman shows too much, he no longer finds her appealing. I think that this causes so much confusion and wounds in women. Of course it does, and that's game playing. It's immature, it's not the king, it's a teenager, it's a guy acting like an adolescent. A gentleman doesn't treat a lady that way. A gentleman doesn't need to be on the hunt all the time. A gentleman doesn't need to conquer the unattainable. a gentleman wants to love. A gentleman is a king. He doesn't have to go on the hunt. He doesn't have to be in competition with his beloved. He's more interested in knowing and adoring and loving her. So, as a man, I'm definitely not turned on by the unattainable. Yeah, because sounds like you're probably an adult, healthy man. So I don't know which one of you said this, but some men are attracted to the unattainable. It's like, what kind of men have you experienced that with? That's game playing. That's manipulative. It's dishonest. And I don't know about you, but I don't have any interest in that, because it's not complete honesty. It's putting on masks. There are people that do that. Some people do that just for fun because they know they're doing it. It's like, ooh, come and get me. Ooh, come and get me. Where it's a game that's playful and flirtatious. And it's given that it's playful and flirtatious, but it's not manipulative, where you don't know where you stand. I wanted to go back. Love these comments, don't you guys? So I talked about the rejection thing. Did I get clear on that one? And then on the flower guy, the card guy. So what do I do when I can't use things? That, dear heart, depends on your lady. You want to know her 5 love languages, of course. And pretty much everybody knows the 5 love languages, and the book is available. If you want my handout on it, I'm happy to share that with you. Just shoot me an email. But you want to know what her top 5 love languages are. For example, if her top love language is acts of service, which means she melts when you do the laundry, or she swoons when you put gas in her car, or she thinks that you are the hunkiest guy on the planet Earth when you make the bed, then that's what you want to do. Those are the romantic things that are unique to your lady. You know, there are lots of different things to do, but what you want to do is learn your woman. That itself is novelty and arousal. Learning each other, which means going out to dinner and talking about it. Getting one of those decks of cards where they give you good leading questions, whether it's just about general topics of information or it's one of those sexy ones where just you play with each other. You would discover and explore each other, even if you've been married for 45 or 55 years. If you're healthy, you're always learning and growing, or changing your taste, or discovering something and then saying, oh, I like this one better now. I didn't used to, but now I do. And that means an ongoing friendship interaction, learning each other and saying, sometimes, it's really easy when you say, when I put gas in your car, was that a 0 to 10? What was that? And she'll say, well, that was a 5. Okay, good. When I folded the towels and put them away, what was that, 0 to 10? Oh, that was a 10. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know it was a 10. I thought maybe it was a 3 or 4. But if it's a 10, holy smoke, you're going to fold the towels again. So that little 0 to 10 thing, I use it as a therapist when people say something and I'm not quite sure how much I'm on track or how much that means to them. Just use that little 0 to 10 scale. It gets accuracy right there, and it's oftentimes revealing things that even though you've been together for ages, it's like, oh, I didn't know it was that important to you. I knew it was important, but not that important. Yeah, and I hear this other person saying, if my girl came on to me, I would not reject her advances. So he's encouraging you. And that, I think, is true of most of our men. They love it when we make them feel like they're desirable. It's true for all of us. We want to feel desired. We want to feel wanted. And there are simple ways of saying that sometimes we forget. There's nothing in a healthy person more irresistible than feeling as if you are the number one person, the number one relationship in your beloved's life. And that you make that clear with your behavior, your words, how you touch, how you look at them. And there are a lot of people who do not feel like they're number one. If you travel too much or your beloved travels too much, it's very easy to get to the place where you feel like you're not number one anymore until you're together. And then you can make those assurances in no uncertain terms, or you can do it on the telephone, however you do it. But you want your beloved, without a doubt, to know that they are number one with you. Let's see what else we've got here. We talked about the unattainable. Yes, Heather, that game is all too common. The one about wearing masks and kind of being falsely coy, which is what teenagers do. This is not what gentlemen and ladies do. And this is one of my complaints about wanting us to move out of the white knight and the damsel, and, you know, they're barely out of high school, right? Into being real adults, a man, a real man, and a real woman, and the king and the queen. Thank you for the 5 love language reminder. I had forgotten that part. Cool. You're welcome. We women have a couple different sides and ways of being. It sure is nice to have a man understand those different aspects of my psyche. And another person says, I agree. Yeah, because then you know that you're number one. And what they're doing is not for any other woman in the world, it's for their woman. Heather, how can I help my guy in this area without making him feel ignorant about this subject? Or should I be so concerned about how he takes my influence, my information to help him? And another person says, no need to walk on eggs. Well, yes and no. I love this question, you guys. It's very true that we are all sensitive to criticism. And when you care, you're sensitive to criticism. It's like, oh, you know, maybe what I'm doing isn't good enough or isn't what they want. And I want to do what's good. I want to be acceptable. I want to be thrilling to my partner. So, number one, if you haven't got my handout on quote-unquote cushion statements, I've got quite a piece on cushion statements on my website under the communication page. And you'll see my little illustration there with 2 cushions and a bowl in between. Start with the positives, eh? Yes, start with the positives. And also, what's really guiding this this desire for you to communicate is that you want more of the love that the two of you have. And that's awesomely about novelty and arousal. So instead of thinking about it as him might be taking it as criticism, reframe it in a way where you have a great idea and you're bringing something special to him and to your relationship. So you couch it as, our relationship is more important to me than anything in the world. And then you tell him all the ways that you love who he is and what he does. And then say, you know, I've got another idea about whatever it is that I think might be fun for us. Now, and then you put some cushion statements in there. You say, now, if it doesn't appeal to you, no sweat. Doesn't bother me, but I have an idea. Are you interested in listening to it? And then he'll say, well, yeah, what is it? Yeah, but if you, let's see here. If you start with the positive, I'm hanging out there waiting for the negative. Uh-oh. Yeah, absolutely. Real love is caring about another person without wanting anything in return. Yes, except for dear hearts. we need to be skilled at the give and take. So we don't need anything in return, but there is the desire for the other person's love. So yes, it's unconditional love, and yet we give and we're open to receiving. Not that we're going to tell them what to do or shut it off. We need to, whatever the other person gives, we also want to unconditionally accept that so that the other person gets the experience as well of being unconditionally loving. So we need it to go both ways. You need to give, yes, and you also need to stop and let the other person feel the equal thrill of having given you unconditional love and seeing that it makes more difference than anything in the world to you. So just that caution there. There's no disappointment or irritation in real love. Well, that's not true. Sorry, dear. No disappointment or irritation in real love. Yes, there is. We're all just human. In real love, unconditional love, we do our best. And still, sometimes we're clumsy. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we're forgetful. Sometimes we say something that hits a raw nerve. And at that point, hopefully, the relationship and the communication is so robust and so clean and clear that I know when Jack hurts my feelings, I have to be clean with him, which means I have to tell him, maybe not instantly, but I have to tell him what it was that hurt my feelings. And you know, I've talked about Jack's curmudgeon, how he just has a real hard time in grocery stores, which means he is not the unconditionally loving guy in a grocery store when he becomes his curmudgeon, and that makes it's a downer for me. So he either can or can't show up in the grocery store. If Mudgy is going to show up in the grocery store, I don't want it. And he still unconditionally loves me, but Mudgy takes over sometimes, and so he takes Mudgy to the car. So, you know, we're not all perfect, even though we are adults. Just let me know what you're thinking. Relationships are complicated enough without playing communication games. That's so true. So true, dear. In my opinion, of course. Yeah, exactly. Playing games, in my mind, I don't have time for it. It's not sincere. It's not honest, which is against my integrity. And it's a kind of betrayal of the best friendship. But this depends on the individual. Personally, I prefer to hear the news straight up and feel vulnerable and weak when I feel like the person needs to soften their negatives. Yes, that's a different style. Some people cut to the chase, tell me. Other people are so emotionally sensitive and tender that if you did that, they're just deflated and they have to work it out. It takes a while for them to communicate and solve the problem with you. So we need to know our personality and we need to know our lover's personality. Let's see here. Communication games are the worst. But someone may be trying to communicate and it comes out appearing to be a game. Yeah. And that's when you want to communicate even more clearly, right? And not play games yourself. Let's see. My software isn't working right here for me. Okay, there we go. Well, I've had my husband walk off after I've been too direct with my communication. Yeah. And is true of, in most cases, not all, sometimes men are more emotionally sensitive than women, and we do know that men are more emotionally sensitive to women's emotional drama than a woman is aware oftentimes. So yeah, he probably couldn't take it. He was just oversensitized to you and very sensitive to you. If he loves you, he's going to be if he's that kind of a guy, very sensitive to whatever it is you say. And that means that then what we want in in our relationships is to be courteous and kind, to be virtuous, to be caring about how we communicate. Some people, like that other person, definitely cut to the chase, tell me the truth, get to the bottom line. And then there are other people who don't do well without courtesy and gentleness and kindness. Know your man, know your woman, dear ones. So maybe walking on eggs a bit sometimes is a good idea. Well, we don't want to walk on eggshells. I would say more about being sensitive, patient, kind, gentle. It doesn't have to mean walking on eggshells, waiting for the sky to fall in or something, but to be aware of how you want to conduct yourself as a lady and a gentleman, which is oftentimes with discernment and courtesy and caring, and beginning a conversation and finding where the other person is. If this is your beloved, you know them well, and it may take a little bit of time to find out what the best approach is at this point, or maybe you just need to learn and listen. So maybe walking on eggs a bit is sometimes a good idea. Yes, sometimes. Good idea? Never, in my humble opinion. Well, it depends on your spouse, dears. It depends on how emotionally sensitive and available someone is. There are different ways of being emotionally intelligent in healthy ways because it's based on our personalities. Some people are very outgoing, very expressive, very bottom line, or very passionate, or maybe even big about how they communicate. And they may want that kind of very upfront communication from their spouse. Another person may be tender and shy and introverted, where they're a little sensitive about things. You want to be discerning and match and mirror that person. We're all pretty complicated, yes. And Jack will tell you so often when somebody asks me a question, my response will be, well, it's more complicated than that, or it's a lot more complicated than that. Not complicated, just practical. Yes, practical and real. We want what we want when we want it. Of course, too bad we don't always want it at the same time. Complicated, yes, and sometimes that's good, because sometimes it's better if there's one person that's strong and can hold it for the other person. Sometimes one person has a lot to offer and the other person is glad to receive, rather than, butting heads. I think if we both try to give more than we take, we might get more of what we want. It depends, right? When we want it. It depends. It depends on your personality, your spouse's personality, what it is that you want, what it is that your spouse thrives on or wants and at different times. The more my husband gives to me when I'm difficult, the more I want to give to him, even when I'm feeling difficult. Isn't that a perfect example of unconditional love? I know when Jack is kind to me and I've just gone off, not that I'm never mean, but I just went rah, rah, rah. And he was so sweet and kind to me. It's like, oh, what a guy, And we have that sensitivity and that appreciation. Heather, I'm glad you clarified that men are more emotionally sensitive to their wives. Not necessarily to other things in general, but actually she is far more sensitive than I am in general. Yeah, and, where we're sensitive is where we open our heart. And where we open our heart is obviously with the beloved, sometimes with our children, depending on how old they are and where they are, sometimes with a best friend or a parent. But the place where we're most open and vulnerable because we've let them in so deeply is the twin soul. My partner didn't do anything for Valentine's this year. When I gave him my gift, I sensed his uncomfortability but didn't say anything and left to give him a chance to pick something up. 2 days passed and finally I brought it up, and he didn't know why he didn't do anything and honestly seemed ashamed. He's not at all a jerk, but I sensed something going on there. Yeah, um, probably, in the very beginning, you probably wanted to get clean, right in the very beginning, rather than kind of just taking hands off and kind of, in essence, testing him, waiting to see what he did. Because it could be taken like that. And you could say, immediately when you sensed his uncomfortableness, um, at that point you could say, "Sweetie, I can tell you feel uncomfortable. I really didn't mean to make you feel guilty by getting you something. And it would be really nice if you would get me something. As a matter of fact, I'd really like flowers. And doesn't have to be on Valentine's Day." And then he knows what you want. And then he can go out and get it and know that he's done the right thing and he's been a good guy. But that was what we would call a withhold, where you noticed he was uncomfortable and you didn't tell him your thoughts. Let's see here. My husband forgot one year. He felt terrible, and I tried not to make a big deal about it. Yeah, and then what you want to do is you want to say, "Sweetie, I can tell you feel terrible, and that tells me how much you love me. Thank you so much for loving me so well." And we all forget sometimes. I bet you won't forget next year. Or maybe I should remind you next year. So you're playful with it. You're loving and kind with it. You're open and honest and sincere with it. Is it uncomfortability a word, he said, smiling? I don't know, but it worked for me. How do I figure out what's going on? Well, usually you ask. We've talked about it since, and we're all cool now. See, there you go. That's a good relationship. You talked about it. You're cool now. You took care of it. You solved the problem, probably with kindness and maybe even a sense of humor. The word you're looking for is discomfort. Ah, thanks. Yes, indeed. My girl's birthday is March. Would rather have roses then than February 14th. So practical. Practical. How about practical for a word? But he didn't forget. My gut is that something is holding him back. Only I can't get it out of him. You might want to be honest with him and very gentle, and tell him that if what he's holding on to, he's worried that it may hurt your feelings or something, tell him that you'd feel more comfortable, even if it's something that he's worried about, not having any secrets and him sharing it, than wondering what he's withholding from you. So you might want to write that in a note, and you might want to kind of interview him, saying, "Is this something about us?" And he'd say yeah or no. "Is it something about something I did?" So and it may be, and this is not uncommon, it may be that he really doesn't know. He may know that there's something not quite right, but he's not sure what it is. And in that case, help him. Take his hand, interview him. "Well, do you think it's this, sweetie?" "No, I don't think so." "I believe that he really doesn't know." Yeah. And it may be connected with something when he was a child, or another relationship, or some other part of his life. And it's a fun thing to take his hand and to say, "Well, let's see if we can figure it out." I forgot my own birthday one year. Yeah, we do that. There was something back here I wanted to comment. Okay. Your girl that is practical would rather have roses in her birthday than February 14th. Well, I just like, I would want to do both. And I don't know if she may be, so it would offend her, and or she would think it was a waste and not like it. But maybe even just one rose on Valentine's Day, something, some way to say, you can have both, dear. Um, Sometimes practicality comes from having been abused by poverty, or by being pretty selfless and taking care of other people. Sometimes it's just flat out practical. So I don't know about your lady, but when in doubt, I would want to acknowledge. We have few rituals as it is. So when when there's a special day, I want to take full advantage of that special day. But in the love language that your sweetie really appreciates. Maybe she doesn't want flowers. Maybe she'd like a potted plant that would last longer. And you get her roses for her birthday, and then you get her something different. Even like a bulb that is in one of those pots where you water it and it grows. Just something. I love doing things like that. I love people doing things like that with each other. Okay, what do we got here? You guys are being funny. That's cute. I would love to play Scrabble with you. I beat everyone. Touche. Ha. Yes, something. The day really should be acknowledged. I have a Korean Scrabble dictionary. Oh, Lordy. That would not be fair. I know, no foreign words, but we are digressing, eh? Digressing indeed. Yes, you're playing. And look at that. On this red room, when we're talking about novelty and arousal, you guys are doing exactly that. You're bringing in novelty and arousal. The best sort comes from silliness and a sense of humor. Thank you so much. It's delightful. Any more questions for Heather? Novel, this baby, indeed. Thank you so much. How delightful. Okay, that's Jack. Jack's pretty awesome. I'm a pretty lucky lady. So I think the theme from all of your comments tonight, my response is over and over again, getting to know the person that you love. Because everybody else, that's fine. But what's really important is wanting my beloved to feel like he is number one with me. You wanting your beloved to feel like she is number one with you. And that whatever it is that floats their boat, that's where you spend your time, energy, money, and attention. Jack's other brother. You guys. So if you don't know your beloved's love languages, I would recommend you figure that one out ASAP, the 5 love languages. And I would really recommend that you do the Enneagram if you haven't already done that with me, because that's one of the places that quickly tells me what's going to work with somebody and what's not going to work. No, that was not me, Jack. I never participate in this, he said, smiling. Yes, he doesn't actually. He tunes in. He's there for me. He's right upstairs in his home office above me, and he's got my back, and I can depend on that. If you have not, your Enneagram, I love you, Jack. Get your Enneagram and your lover's Enneagram, because that will tell you a whole lot. Do they like surprises? Not like surprises. Do they want the bottom line? Do they want romance and subtlety and metaphor? Do they want to get something practical done? Or do they want a deep, quiet conversation? You probably already know that. And if you know their Enneagram, you'll know that more deeply. And of course, their love languages. You guys are great. Thank you. Yes, the Enneagram is so helpful. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight to the Red Room, where we're talking about novelty and arousal other than sex. Next week, we'll talk about sexual arousal. Tonight, it's how we get excited, how we get our juices going, how we lift our attitude, our sensibilities, and create that delicious, happy, life-filled space with each other and for each other. More sex, more sex. Yes, usually we do need that. Of the healthy kind. These days, of course, you know, there is a lot of sex around and a lot of it isn't healthy. I recommend the healthy kind. Oh, yes. Take care, dear ones. I'm signing off from the Red Room tonight. Also, GDX, they're putting in some 3-letter acronyms tonight. You guys are hilarious. Thank you so much. I love my audiences. I love these conversations. Come on over next week, and we'll talk more about relationships, and next week specifically about sex. And most people are pretty interested in that, whether or not they're doing well. It's usually healthy, interesting, and as I say, the ultimate panacea, if it's healthy in your life. Thank you, Heather. I love Deep in the Money. Thank you, and good night, everyone.